I think we can move on to the next topic that we have here, and we are going to talk about the Warriors and the Chris Paul partnership. Who benefits most from the Chris Paul Warriors partnership? Zach.
Yeah, this is a really good question. My answer isn't going to be either one necessarily. I'm going to go with the Wizards. I think that of all of the teams throughout the last few weeks with all these big trades, I do think they did pretty well getting Tyus Jones. And I know he's not necessarily going to be a guy that helps them right now, but I do think he's going to be a very valuable asset at the trade deadline. He is a guy who is arguably probably is the best backup point guard in the league, and he would be valuable to any team looking for a point guard or not. And I do think for the Wizards to get Jordan Poole back for Chris Paul, I do think that's a solid move for them. I know Poole is making a lot of money, but I do think in Washington, where they just need as many guys who could score the basketball as possible, that is a solid pickup for Washington. But with Golden State and Chris Paul, I really do think that when Bob Myers, their GM, left the team kind of out of nowhere, not a lot of people saw it coming. In my opinion, that did signal the end of the Warriors dynasty. And I understand that there were things going pretty off the rails before he decided to leave. I was honestly surprised that Golden State was able to find a way to beat the Sacramento Kings in round one of the playoffs after how bad of a regular season they had. Probably there weren't a ton of teams worse in terms of road record than the Warriors. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, Golden State is going to have a lot of important decisions made with those two guys in their future. They're getting older. This core that has won so much, it's getting older. And I understand Stephen Curry, he is a winning player that has won all these rings and has done so much for this Warriors franchise. But I'm just confused, like, why would Bob Myers leave? He's a guy that has had so much success with this Warriors franchise, and he just leaves out of nowhere just a year after they won the title. I know that Golden State, you can make the argument also, they blew a couple first-round picks. James Wiseman, he's no longer there. Jonathan Kuminga can't find his way onto the floor in an important playoff game. Moses Moody is probably the best pick out of them right now, and at best, he's a rotational shooter. That is good, but I don't necessarily know how much of an impact he makes on your ceiling. And look, you won't find many bigger Chris Paul fans than me, right? I understand he's not the perfect player. He has a ton of flaws. He always gets hurt in the playoffs. He's never won a championship. He has an attitude that could rub off on the wrong way for depending on who his teammates are. But I like Chris Paul in a situation like Oklahoma City. I like Chris Paul in a situation like Phoenix, where he went to a team that was trying to break through, that was trying to get to the playoffs for the first time in a while, and he did a great job turning both of those situations around. But honestly, like Chris Paul on the Warriors, the same team that he had those epic playoff duels with James Harden. Every time I think of Chris Paul and the Warriors, I think of Game 6 of the 2018 Western Conference Final when Chris Paul, he's making, or Game 5, I should say, actually, in Houston, when he's making a three in Steph Curry's face, he's doing the shimmy in his face, and the Rockets, they were about to go up 3-2 on the Warriors, and then 2 seconds later, Chris Paul, he gets hurt, and he's out for the rest of the playoffs. There was also a story I read that prior to game number 7 of that same series, Rockets-Warriors, Chris Paul, he found out that Steph Curry was taking shots in the gym the night before game number 7 of that series. And then Chris Paul, he told his guy, like, no, that's not going to fly. Get this guy out of here. And Steph Curry got kicked out of the gym. He didn't forget about that. And, like, Chris Paul, he just has so much history with the Warriors. This is a team that's on the decline. I honestly don't see this working. I don't see anyone benefits of the two sides.
Zay?
Who benefits most from the Chris Paul Warriors partnership? The Western Conference. They benefit tremendously because the Warriors dynasty is done. They're on a decline. They are sloping down the hill, and adding Chris Paul is at a quickened pace when they got rid of Jordan Poole, the future starting shooting guard of the Warriors at one particular point, and they got rid of him. The team is they have an asset deficit. For what I would say, they don't have a depth. They don't have bench depth. They don't really have guys outside of Curry and Klay currently on that roster. There's rumors that Draymond Green might go join up with Mike Brown in Sacramento because they have such a close-knit relationship, and Sacramento can offer him the money he's looking for. Relations play a key factor, and to be honest, Draymond has been the scapegoat of the Golden State Warriors for some time now. They've been using him, blaming him for a lot of the losses for his attitude, quote unquote, his tenacity, and then sometimes intense moments with Steve Kerr and the rest of the team. And they've been using his name as a negative, basically a negative spot on his career. And I think, Draymond's probably tired of it. Draymond, as much as he loves Steph Curry, as much as he wants to run it back, he could look at Sacramento as like, this is the next Golden State Warriors. This is the next team that could take over the Western Conference with their speed, their agility, with their IQ. And I think that's something he's looking at when he's looking to possibly going back and forth. That Western Conference is looking steep with the removal of Bob Myers from that Warriors team, who was essentially the architect of getting different guys, veterans on that team to accompany Steph Curry, Clay, Draymond, to get those championships over there. And I think maybe, I think it's done leaving now currently. And, it's his first year. We don't know what moves he's going to make, what he's capable of doing. But Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors are no longer, we'll take a vet minimum to play with that team. It's no longer that level of team anymore. So now you got to actually give them a good contract to bring over some good players. And I don't think they are capable of doing so, which allows me to say the Western Conference benefits, because now we're seeing new teams in that top 6, top 8 category to play for those playoff spots. And I just I don't see the Warriors as a team that's a threat anymore. They look like a wounded animal, just basically bleeding out. And they're trying as much as they can to keep moving forward. But right now, the legs are getting cut from underneath them. And it's looking like this was a last heroic effort to possibly get some life on this Warriors team. And it doesn't look good so far.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that the Warriors benefit the most because of their inability to develop young players. If you look at the last 15 drafts, right, only 13 out of the last 15 rookies made it past their rookie contracts. Okay, that should be telling. Translation, they really don't develop people. You have to be seasoned because they are competing for championships, and that's what they want to continue to do. So they don't have the patience to develop those young guys, including on that list, the number 2 overall pick, I believe, James Wiseman, right? They got rid of his ass real quickly, right? And the only 2 guys that made it past their rookie contracts, and actually they're not past their rookie contracts, this is their 3rd year, is Kuminga and Mooney. So that's one right there. We know Steve Kerr doesn't have the patience as a coach to, get these guys playing time, because when they make mistakes, he declined their minutes, right? That's number 2. Also, we know Draymond Green. It's funny you brought him up. He doesn't know how to deal with a young guy dealing with fame for the first time. He thinks he's a punching bag. He goes ahead and punches him in the face. So, to be real with you, the Warriors don't know how to deal with young guys. And giving up on Poole is just more so a microcosm of this process of them being the Warriors. Forget the young guys. We are going to get names that we already know. They signed Kevin Durant. That's not like a outside the box, kind of chess move made by Bob Myers. Oh my gosh, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread because he signed Kevin Durant. It's Kevin Durant. Okay? I will sign him too. Okay? So it's not like they did anything spectacular outside of drafting, Curry, and, Curry is Curry and Klay Thompson, and they got a nice role for Dre. I think Dre can take that role to other teams like the Kings and Portland and still be that same Draymond Green, right? But they don't develop young guys. Chris Paul has an opportunity right now to literally be the Sean Livingston of this second unit. Remember, Sean Livingston, he wasn't compatible to Curry. They have nothing in common like that. But he knew what he liked to do. Get inside the arc and jack up shots and take that mid-range shot. Similar to Chris Paul, who's a mid-range guy. He still got that shot. Now, I know he's shot, but he still got that shot. Okay, so he can run the second unit. And I understand that we have a lot of questions because I do in my mind. How is this going to work? The pace that he plays at and the pace that the Warriors play at, they always trying to move and the fast pace and all that. But what I did take in consideration when answering this is everywhere Chris Paul has gone, he has made an impact, and a significant impact on the teams he went to. The Rockets, the OKC Thunder, the Suns, Everywhere he's gone, he made an impact. So I'm going to give Chris Paul the benefit of the doubt and say he could find a role on this team. It may not be a large role. And hell, you don't want 38, 40-year-old Chris Paul to have a large role. You want him to help your second unit, who was giving you fits last year. So let him operate the second unit. If he can develop guys, because Chris Paul is known to develop guys and young guys, then he should develop the second unit. And I didn't even get started with the flexibility from a cap perspective that this deal allows him to do. They get rid of Jordan Poole's $128 million contract. Yeah, you take it and let him give you your 26 points per game with those rainbow shots, Wizards. Okay, cool. I got cap relief now. So now I can sign Draymond Green and say, well, Draymond Green, you ain't going nowhere, bro. Okay, I can sign Klay Thompson when it's due for another contract. I can keep my core together and guess what? Give myself a shot to win a championship again. So if there's any benefit, here, the Warriors got that benefit.
But do we think this core could do that? Like, I just don't necessarily know, even with Chris Paul, what the ceiling is for this Warrior team. Like, it's important to realize, like, Klay Thompson, I don't think he's the same player as he once was, 5 years ago. He looked a little bit shot.
No, that's fair, Zach. That's fair. But I said it before, Zach, when we talked about Bob Myers, the dynasty was over. I've been said that. So this doesn't expand no window. Even keeping Poole wasn't going to expand no window. Right? The dynasty been over. What they did was shed a bad contract, because let's call that a bad contract. It's a bad contract for a short-term investment to see the payoff. And if it doesn't pay off, all right, cool, you off the books. I don't got to worry about cap relief. They are a luxury tax team. Right? They are deep into that luxury tax. And with the new CBA, that's a great move from a flexibility perspective to get rid of this cap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, then if I felt that way, though, if I were them, I would trade Klay Thompson right now. And I might even consider letting Draymond Green walk, because I do think Chris Paul, this fit, it just doesn't really seem right. It doesn't really seem natural to me. And I think the Warriors dynasty officially ended the day that Draymond Green did punch Jordan Poole. And it kind of became clear that those two guys, they weren't going to be able to be on the same team for the foreseeable future. Now, I would love to know how Steph Curry feels deep down about all this. He's the face of your franchise. He's going to be the one orchestrating and making a lot of these decisions. But like Mike Dunleavy Jr., I don't necessarily trust him as a GM, especially compared to Bob Myers. He was saying a couple days ago that, Jordan Poole, he's going to be a great long-term piece, long-term solution to the franchise, and he trades him a couple days later. Just another lesson. You can't really take anything these guys say too seriously. But I mean, Chris Paul to the Warriors, I just don't necessarily. I like what Zay said. I think the one who benefits the most is the Western Conference.
Now, this is my last point. Like I said before, I'm not saying it's beneficial because they're going to win a championship, right? I said it's beneficial because he can try to help that second unit and because of the money behind the deal and the cap relief and all that. But another thing too, the dynasty been over because they don't know how to develop young guys. And that's the problem. They don't know how to develop young guys. Their inability to develop the young guys. Those young guys were supposed to prolong the dynasty. They were supposed to take the baton from the Draymond Greens and Klay Thompson so they could take a step back in a sense so they can carry it, right? So they could get that experience, which they got, but they just never committed to the development. So they did what they normally do. I'm going to get a veteran that's, inexperienced. Look, Andrew Wiggins was a gamble. And it worked. He was a best player on that championship run outside of Curry, right? The most important player besides Steph Curry, right? Deshaun Livingston, like I brought up before, that was a gamble. He was hurt, right? He almost had a career-ending injury. It worked out. So what I'm saying is that they're doing what they normally do, which is sign the veteran and forget the young guy. Go ahead, do what you do. Whatever you do best is what you do. Let's see if it works.
It'll be interesting what the Warriors decide to do. Curry's contract is up to 2026. Klay Thompson's contract is he's on his final year going into the season. Draymond possibly looking for another contract with the Warriors, probably moving on. I wonder if they try to extend everybody to 26. When Curry's contract is officially up, everyone kind of ends on the same accord or together. I'll be interested to see what happens there because right now it's not looking good. Chris Paul and everybody else on this team, it's not looking like a team that's destined to win. But if you could somehow, some way keep Draymond and Clay together for at least another season or two, and then y'all can all retire together, you could essentially see y'all ride it out into the sunset, essentially. It'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of interesting points around this Warriors team, around Chris Paul. Chris Paul is a very intelligent player. He's very vocal in the locker room. He's a guy who's very X's and O's based, which is what is the base of this Warriors team, including speed. I just don't know if it's going to fit well with this team. Like, I don't see them competing with the Kings with Chris Paul on the court, or the Nuggets with Chris Paul on the court, or even the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a plethora of teams in this Western Conference that just makes it interesting what this Warriors team is trying to do. They can't turn back the clock for Chris Paul. He's not going to get faster, younger, more athletic. His play as is injury riddled. This guy's been hurt so many different times over the last couple of seasons is because he's doing way more than what he's capable of doing. He has to slow the game down. And I think joining the Warriors team is only going to quicken the lifespan of Chris Paul in this league. This man is potentially going to get a strained hamstring 1 or 2 times in the season because of how fast the Warriors play. They move with pace. You got to move up with us. And I think that's something that is going to be detrimental to the season. But I say all that to say that there's going to be a new Western Conference team soon. And we'll see who it is that oversees this Warriors team in the playoffs. It may be the Kings. It may even be the Portland Trailblazers if Dame decides to stay there. But it's going to be interesting on what's going to happen this upcoming season with Golden State because we don't know what is bound to happen even this Friday, which is the free agency.
This is my last point on this topic, right? And I'm not saying that I co-sign what I'm about to say. Certain times where I give my opinion and certain times when I'm a reporter of what's going on. I talk about what's going on. I talk about the culture of the NBA. And I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to talk about the culture, right? When you look at the NBA, when teams are winning championships or trying to compete for championships and their window is closing, that's when they're the most aggressive to get rid of young guys. We saw it with the Suns, right? The Suns, they made the finals a couple years ago, and they realized, like, yo, our window is closing, right? So we are going to trade Mikal Bridges, who they could have used, right? Who they could have groomed with more offensive opportunities to be that number 2 to Devin Booker, but they traded him for not Bradley Beal, for Kevin Durant, okay? And then they kept going. They're like, all right, we might as well trade for Bradley Beal then. That's how they operate. Like the Warriors are in the same sense. Like, yo, our championship window is closed. They would never admit to that, but they know it's closing. We know it's probably closed. So we are going to get rid of the young guy because we need it now before it's too late, before it really closed, even though it may be really closed. And that's why they're going after the CP3. I'm just reporting what I see in the NBA. Teams think that way. If they can't homegrown their talent, and think about it, Denver will probably do the same thing in the future when it's time for them to be in this position that the Warriors are in. Everything is cool right now. I admire you, Denver, because you homegrown your talent. But watch Denver in the future, because once you win a championship, you never want to do without it. You never want to do without it because you know how it feels to be at the mountaintop. So when it comes to a situation years from now, they're like, nah, hold up. Nah, our dynasty, whatever we trying to build, it's not over. We're going to want to win again. They're going to trade some of those young guys for another veteran. I see the same thing in the cycle, y'all. I'm just reporting it. So the Warriors are doing what a lot of teams in the NBA do, which is try to throw up Hail Marys to extend the window. Now, whether we feel it's going to work or not, we don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it is. Yeah, y'all feel confident it's not. But I say that to say they move on from Poole because they don't know how to develop young guys. And they got a guy in CP3 who has been a winner everywhere he goes. Now, we could talk about the fit. We could talk about all that. But one thing I know is his resume. And one thing I know is the Warriors' resume. And let's see if those resumes can collude into something that is there still, even if we don't feel it is.
So part of the reason why I said I thought the day the Warriors dynasty was the same day that Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole in practice is because Jordan Poole, he's a flawed player with plenty of issues, but he's actually the one young player recently that the Warriors have drafted that has panned out at least a little bit. His contract is terrible, and that's really, I think, the main reason, along with the punch, why they moved him. But if they didn't pay Jordan Poole and they wanted to trade him post-punch. I think they could have gotten back much better pieces that could have helped them win more than Chris Paul. And I think the Warriors really did this deal because when they decided to pay Jordan Poole, that was an awful decision that's aged terribly. I do think if they just trade Jordan Poole without his contract, then they could get a lot back better than Chris Paul to help them win. So I think the combination of Draymond punching Poole, along with the fact that they decided to pay Jordan Poole, and then the guy who decided to pay Jordan Poole all that money is now gone. He's now nowhere to be seen. So it's clear Dunleavy didn't like that deal. And I think those two events happening really is when it hit me like, shoot, the Warriors dynasty, this is the end. It's over.
Yo, I lied. I told the fairy tale. This is going to be my last lap right here, my last point, because I just thought of something. Sometimes you think of ideas on the fly and you're like, all right, I might as well just spit it out. Better late than never, right, Zay? But anyway, you see the sequence there, right? Because of how we started the show. I know you got that, right? But anyway, Zay, you made a point about the Western Conference benefiting. And Zach, you agreed with him. But if y'all saying that the Warriors dynasty been over, how could they benefit? The Western Conference is here. The Nuggets won the championship. The Kings are on the rise. The Kings took the Warriors to 7 games, and experience was the difference, right? Something that they're going to take with them next year. So the Western Conference been here, right? The Warriors, if their window was already closed, and this deal didn't make nothing change anyway. What I'm saying is the difference is the cap flexibility here, because the Western Conference, they was already good, right? So we think, right, if their dynasty is over, so it can't be the Western Conference. Yeah, the Wizards, you could say that they benefit because they get a young guy in Poole. They could build around their core of Kuzma and Poole. So I could respect that. But I think when you talk about really the reason why this trade was done for, I think the Warriors got what they wanted in that way, in that one side of the bracket. And that's it.
Well, with that cap space, though, my issue is that they're probably going to spend it on Clay and Draymond, and I don't think that's going to help you win anything in the situation they're in right now.
Yeah, I think if you're the Warriors, and, I'm going to take the Patriots as a prime example, eventually, if they really want to optimize a closing window, they are going to have to make a Godfather decision with one of their cornerstones that helped them get there. They're going to have to do that. Whether it's trade Clay or Draymond Green, they're going to have to do that. But they don't want to, and that's their issue. They like, oh, we got us here. Y'all got us here. We want to live and die by you. This loyalty thing, similar to Dame in Portland, this loyalty with the core. But if you really want to optimize your window, you could be loyal, fine. That's on you. But to optimize that window that's really closing shut, they're going to have to trade and make a Godfather choice. And if they don't want to make that choice, then they ain't going to make no moolah. And what I mean by moolah, I'm talking about championships.
Let me throw one possible trade at you guys. I'm curious for what you guys think on this. And I know it would be a little weird considering these teams just played in the playoffs. They're in the same state. They're in the same division. They have a lot of history. So the Kings owner, right, this guy, Vivek Ranadive, he used to come from Golden State. He was in their organization, and then he bought the Sacramento Kings. We know a lot of the similarities those two teams have. As a matter of fact, he hired Mike Brown as the Kings coach from Golden State. He was the top assistant. If you're the Warriors and Vivek calls you up right now and asks, would you want to give me Klay Thompson straight up for Kevin Huerter? Would you do it? If I'm Golden State, I'm doing that move. But unfortunately, I don't think they would do that because Klay, he's done so much for their franchise. We know him and Curry, the relationship they have. But that's the kind of trade I think if I'm Golden State, if I'm really trying to get back in this and really try to make the last few years of this window count, it would be a deal like that, moving off of Klay, moving off a guy like Draymond. I think that would be the deal to, if this dynasty has any shot of staying alive, it would be that kind of deal they would have to make, not trading away Chris Paul for Jordan Poole. I just don't know if Golden State would be willing to do that.
I think that'll be an interesting prop for the Warriors because Kevin Huerter, as solid as he is as a basketball player, I think he has a lot of untapped potential that could possibly be opened on this Warriors team, but maybe it peaks at that moment because I don't see him being as like I'm trying to phrase it correctly. So when we look at Klay Thompson, said he had an off year, he doesn't look the same. He was still averaging 20 points per game. He was still hitting some big shots and still showing glimpses of that old Klay Thompson. Kevin Huerter would never get to that level. I think if Kevin Huerter played even close to what Klay did last year, we're talking about Kevin Huerter being the best shooter in the league, one of the best shooters in the league, or even one of the best shooting guards in the league, just because of how impactful Klay Thompson is on the basketball floor. If Klay Thompson goes to the Kings, I'm a big person that has stated that Klay Thompson is arguably the main reason why the Warriors won so many rings, the reason why Curry went to so many playoffs, because Klay is so impactful on the basketball floor, on both sides of the floor. He changes the game for everybody. Curry never been to a playoffs without Klay Thompson, and that's something that people need to keep in mind, because Klay is a different beast on the floor. No, he's not on ball heavy. He doesn't have the dribble moves and all those other things that other guys have. But Klay himself, as a shooter, as a marksman, as a defender, changes the game for any team in the NBA on immediate impact. And I think that's something that the Warriors would think about when mulling over any trade to any team, because they know once he goes to that team elevates to another level than where they're currently at. Rather, that's a final NBA championship team or a deep playoff run team. But they know what Klay is capable of doing once he touches the basketball floor.
I low-key disagree with that. Before the Achilles injury, obviously he always had his defense, right? Locking up the number one guy, whatever. But like he would have streaky shooting moments, and that never changed. While a lot of people, when they saw him after Achilles, when it came to his scoring, which his defense fell off after the Achilles injury, by the way. And when you talk about his offense, it was like, the injury has something to do with it. The injury had nothing to do with his offense. He was always tricky. There were times where he did not show up in the finals. We could look up the stats. There was times where he went cold. So he always been that streaky player. Injury did not make the difference. The only thing the injury impacted was his defense. If you want to talk about the most important player on this run of the dynasty with the Warriors, not named Curry, is Draymond Green, because he brought that villain to that team. Like, he literally was the villain of the team. Every team needs a villain, a guy that's going to do the gritty work and give them a sense of physicality in a way, give that team a physical identity in some instances. I remember in Game 7 against the Cavaliers, they lost that game, right? They blew the 3-1 lead, but who dropped 30? Draymond Green. He did something that he's not even accustomed to doing. So I think he actually was the most important part of that dynasty, not named Curry.
So, Will, would you make that trade, Klay for Huerter? I think I might.
I mean, they possibly could if they want to. I wouldn't mind it. I just think they need to bring back Draymond. They need to keep Draymond. That's what I would start by doing. I would start by keeping Draymond, making sure he's back. Because if he goes, then there's no trade that you can do. I don't care what trade you try to do, unless you get another star that's going to keep this window open. It will be closed. The day Draymond Green leaves is really the day that this dynasty is completely shut.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.